Auburn and Alabama as a rivalry, and then individually buy stock into both of these teams. I think that there's a lot of conversation about what the Iron Bowl is going to be in the post-Saban era, and I think this opens the door for, if you're an Auburn fan or an Alabama hater, thinking to yourself, this is an opportunity for Auburn to kind of make some hay in this rivalry where it's kind of been dominated by Alabama in over the course of Saban's tenure. Hugh Freeze, proven recruiter. They had a top 10 class last year. They have a top 10 class this year. You two may not know this, but if you were to go to the top 10 recruits in the state of Alabama right now, 8 of them are committed to Auburn, 2 of them committed to Ohio State. So Auburn has overwhelming majority of the top players in the state of Alabama committed to the program in the 2025 cycle, stacking talent on top of a class last year. Hugh Freeze has proven that he can win in the SEC. So you might not see the returns on it this year, but this is a program that is trending up. On the Alabama side, Kalen DeBoer, obviously proven winner. Alabama has the number 2 recruiting class in the country. They're recruiting nationally at a pretty unprecedented rate for a coach that is replacing the greatest recruiter of all time and coming into a footprint where he's not from and not familiar with. Alabama has players committed, I believe, from 10 different states. They're killing it on the West Coast right now. Number 2 class, most 5 stars in the country committed, I believe. On the field, Alabama is going to be really good as well. So what is this rivalry going to look like moving forward? Is Auburn going to be able to sneak one in on Alabama this year in Kalen DeBoer's first year? Is Kalen DeBoer and Alabama going to continue that dominance in the Iron Bowl? I think both of these teams, though, are in a really good position to win a lot of games and contend, not only this year and into the future. So I'm buying the Iron Bowl. I'm buying both of these programs this year and moving forward. And I feel like this is going to be a rivalry that's not going to take a step back to anybody in terms of the best rivalry in college football. So loving where both of these programs are at right now.
I think Chris Delcani probably disagrees with your assessment of college football's best rivalry. I don't know if I'm on board with this one for you. I need to see more from Peyton Thorne, and the expectations have been so high for Alabama that it feels like just there's got to be some sort of a natural lull in year one under Kalen DeBoer. Personnel, I think they'll be good, but not quite to the level that we've seen some previous Alabama teams where you're looking around and being like, I don't see a weakness. I think big picture, I agree with you that when Kalen DeBoer came in, all the questions were surrounding, can he recruit at an elite level? We mentioned it before. He took over Washington, and I think they were 17th in 24/7 talent composite. When he left, they were 23rd, I believe. That's not the trajectory you want to see in terms of just pure recruiting, even for all the success on the field. So for him to have the kind of success that he's had in the recruiting trail, I think bodes well for him long term. But I think just in general, when you're taking over a spot at Alabama that has so many challenges in year one, I don't know that I'm going to buy high on the tide. I feel like it's a light sell for these guys, and we'll see, maybe buy the dip a year from now.
I'm glad you brought this up. I just want to say one more thing. Since we're on the topic of money, I want to give a shout out to the good people at BetMGM who we partner with on this show. Good people over there. These people are so good and they're so nice that if you were to go on their site right now, you can get Alabama making the playoffs at plus money. Plus 105 for Alabama making the playoff.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
People listening to this podcast, you both, our producer Cam, listen to your big homie Ken. Please put money on Alabama making the playoff. Please, please, please put some money on it. And in December, when Alabama makes the playoff, you'll be able to take that money and buy something nice around Christmas time for your husband, wife, son, daughter, cousin, nephew, niece, whoever it is. This is free money. And then come back, call the hotline, and thank your big homie Ken for making you some money on the college football season.
That's pretty spicy.
To quote our friend Ari Wasserman, free money. They're giving away free money.
That's always good.
I'm sticking in the SEC, and this is a team that David is very familiar with. I am buying stock in the Tennessee Volunteers. You saw what they did in 2022 in terms of having really, really good skill players and an explosive offense that powered them to that double-digit win season. But I think when they played Georgia, you saw the gap in the trenches and what you need along the line of scrimmage to really ascend as at the top-tier college football playoff contender. Move forward a couple of years, I feel like Tennessee has those ingredients of really good skill players and what you need in the trenches to contend for a college football playoff spot. I like what I saw out of Nico Amiolova against Iowa in the bowl game. I think he's going to continue to ascend. I think this is probably the deepest wide receiver core that Josh Heupel has had at Tennessee, just in terms of playable depth. They got 5 or 6 guys that I think are going to be able to contribute. You look at that defensive line, this is going to be a really stout group led by James Pierce, probably a consensus top 5 pick going into the draft this year. I like what Tennessee is cooking up. And also on the talent acquisition side, this is very quiet, but Tennessee is quietly recruiting quarterbacks just as well, if not better than anybody in college football right now. You think about Nico Amioleva. They had, I believe, Jake Merklinger in this fast class 4-star. They come back with Greg McIntyre, class of 2025 guy, top 100 player. A lot of teams wanted him. And then they get Faison Brandon, who is on some websites the number 1 player in the country in the 2026 class. So there is a proof of concept there with quarterbacks that Josh Heupel is selling, that teams are buying into. So I'm liking Tennessee where they are today and where they'll be tomorrow. This is a stock that's going to age very well, I think.
I like this pick, Kenny. I like this pick. I think people are sleeping on Tennessee a little bit. You look at the preseason poll, you look at the coaches poll, which dropped earlier this week. They both agreed. Tennessee 7th in the SEC. I don't think that's where Tennessee is going to finish in the SEC. I think they move up over probably, they might think about Missouri, see what Ole Miss is. I like Tennessee here. I think it comes down to really a pretty simple fact, and that is that they have an upgraded quarterback. I think Nico Iamaleava is a lot better than Joe Milton is. I think they could have played him last year. I think the coaching staff didn't want to press that button. I think that can do some weird things to your locker room if you do that. But I think they're going to have an upgraded quarterback, and that takes you a long, long way. Audrey, from where you're sitting, what do you make of the Vols?
I came with props today, Evan, because I thought maybe you would be the Tennessee guy taking them. This is what they give you when you enroll in a school's graduate program online and never step foot on the campus. They give you a pennant. So, yeah, no, I'm with you. I think this is really smart. I did not realize that when you said that, David, about 7th in the preseason poll. That is wild. That to me is absolutely insane. I think this is a Tennessee team that can push for and get in the playoff. So yeah, I would buy that right now.
My next buy, I got to do it. The Texas Longhorns. I love it. I want more of it. Buy them out of it. It's a bit of a buy high. I recognize this. That's a risky proposition. And I think you look at them and you say, well, you lose T'Vondre Sweat. You lose the heart of your defensive line. You lose Xavier Worthy. You got 3 first-round picks that are off that team. But you look a little closer, you still have 4 offensive line starters back. Yes, you lose Xavier Worthy. You lose Jonathan Brooks. Obviously, we could talk about earlier in the show. You lose C.J. Baxter. But you still got Isaiah Bond and Amari Niblack, both from Alabama. Those guys are both really good players. Trey Moore, a great pickup at edge rusher. 17 and a half TFLs at UTSA last year. I think they're still going to be really good on the lines, and you can't underestimate having a third-year starter with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. I'd like, for him to be healthy. If he can be healthy the whole season, I think that definitely is a huge help for them to achieve what they can do. But if Texas follows up last year with last year's Big 12 title and playoff appearance, and they were pretty close to cracking the national championship game, I think they can do some similar things this year. And Steve Sarkisian is going to be able to do more in terms of play calling with that offense. When you have an experienced offensive line and an experienced quarterback, that opens things up for everybody. So give me the Longhorns to exceed already very high expectations, even in a new league. Kenny, is the SEC going to humble Texas, or does the echoes of last year's win in Tuscaloosa carry to 2024?
Yeah, I think I'm probably leaning a little bit more towards Texas being able to come in and be a dominant team. I'm not as bullish on Texas as you, just because I have just seen too many instances of Texas playing down to their competition. And we can even go back to last year where they did that. They had some scares against some teams that won 3 or 4 games, and they were in some games that they really shouldn't have been. And there's not going to be a a Houston or or a Wyoming, for example, that they're playing into the second half with. There's a heightened level of talent in the SEC across the board. There's going to be better teams. We've seen Texas, on average lose 4 or 5 games a year. So I want to see Texas just step on teams that they're supposed to step on consistently before I really buy into them as a team that's going to be elite and that's going to be here to stay. But this year's Texas team, I'm high on. Obviously, Quinn Ewers coming back. Want to see the next step out of him. I think Isaiah Barnes due for a breakout year. Not Black is a good piece as well. I like what they're doing along the lines of scrimmage as well. So I like where Texas is at as a program, and I think that it's more likely that they take a Missouri route into the SEC and probably play for an SEC championship in the first or second year than a Nebraska route where they come in and face some really bad growing pains.
I think it's going to be interesting. Everybody in the Big 12 hated Texas, loved beating Texas. I mean this as a compliment, Texas. I truly do, even though it's not going to sound like it. I kind of think a lot of people in the SEC don't really care about you. And I think that will help you because everybody's got their own stuff going on. Arkansas hates you, but LSU's kind of like whatever. Alabama's still got Auburn to hate all day, every day. You've got Oklahoma, you got Texas A&M. I kind of think you're just going to come in and you're not going to have a whole league that just relishes rubbing your nose in it. And that, I think, will be a little bit refreshing for these guys.
So I have a hold as well, but this is going to be a hold that kind of sounds like a buy compared to where everybody is at on this program, but I am going to hold Florida stock.
I mean,
okay.
Let's just wait and see what happens
here. Let's just wait and see. And I understand the vibes are not great. I understand where it's at in terms of the schedule. It's obviously brutal. Some might say it might be the toughest that we've seen in college football in the modern era. But I'm going to reference our good friends at BetMGM again, who had them at 4.5 wins. I'm taking the over on that. And honestly, are we not sure that Florida can't hit the over in the first 5 games of the season? This is a team with a blue chip ratio that's 11th nationally. The only tools on this list are that are higher that they play this year are Georgia, Texas, and LSU. Look at their first 5 games of the season. They start with Miami. Miami is basically the same as Florida. They're a team that's kind of meddling right now. Their season could go either way. It's a true toss-up game. Then you have Samford week 2. That should be a winnable game. Texas A&M in week 3. Yeah, Texas A&M is probably going to be a favorite. That's a first-year head coach, first road game in the SEC. That's a winnable game for Florida. They go to Mississippi State in week 4. New coaching staff. Florida's clearly a more talented team than them. That should be a win. And then UCF is a toss-up game in week 5, but Florida is more talented than them. They have them at home. So, yeah, there's a lot of question marks at Florida, but this is still a talented roster. There's a lot of swing games at the beginning of the year that I think could set the table. And I guarantee they're going to beat somebody in that murderer's row at the back end of the schedule that they're not supposed to beat. So let's just wait and see what happens with Florida. Let's not bury them quite yet. Graham Mertz, if you did a blind resume of his stats, they look good compared to some of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. They have DJ Lagway, who's an exciting prospect. So let's just give it a month before we sell on Florida stock. They might surprise some people in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
To me, it's a little bit like buying Blockbuster stock. You might buy a bunch, but if it doesn't work out, you're probably not going to be out too much, Kenny. So I it's okay. It's okay.